Very good morning. So, probably in this session, will be covering concepts in relation to RCM. Now, there are a lot of transactions for which RCM is applicable with respect to services and with respect to certain purchase of goods. Now, our primary discussion is going to be with respect to services. With respect to goods, there will be a separate video on that. There's not much difference if you're able to have a good control over services, and in that case, you'll also have good control in goods. So probably we will be covering the entire aspect with respect to time of supply, considering different combinations, like availing services from a registered party, unregistered party, and also in cases where import of services from a random from a non-related party, and also in cases where import of services from associated enterprises. In those cases, now going forward, so and also we will be covering with respect to ITC component. ITC ITC component, self-invoicing and 16.4 time limit, like what period are you supposed to consider for that particular ITC component? Like till when you can avail it? Like till which year, 30th November, you can avail it. So as of now, we'll have the following structure. For the first part, we'll be just covering just base level concept, a summarized manner, everything. And once that part is done, we'll move to the provision aspects. Provision aspect in the sense like exactly from CVC website, we'll just run through the entire provision, so we'll have a good hold of it. And then the last component will just summarize it and we'll close it off. And probably there will be more assimilated videos, and in this case, so it is advisable to find the particular playlist. Go to playlist rather than watching videos. Just go to playlist and find the respective heading in RCM. You'll find all the RCM related content dumped over there. You know, whatsoever are the current relevance, you will find it over there. So that will be quite helpful for you to navigate towards what is the requirement. So probably we'll just start with the summarized manner. Now, let us first broadly divide the suppliers first. Suppliers, first person located in India. There could be there could be a registered supplier and a unregistered supplier. First, first we have to check whether RCM is applicable or not. Now, in a given current case, we'll assume that the particular transaction falls under RCM. Now, as of current discussion, is only with respect to services. Only with respect to services. Once the first check is done, the second check. What will be the time of time of supply? Time of supply will be giving reference to section number 13. Time of supply is date of payment or 61st day from date of invoice. In case of unregistered person, the time of supply is date of payment or self invoice. Self invoice date. Now, what is the due date of self invoice? Self invoice, as per rule 47A, should be raised within 30 days from date of invoice. Now, coming forward, What will be the, can you avail the ITC? First you have to check whether it is eligible ITC or not. First you have to check the eligibility. Once you approve it is eligible, and once you verify that it is eligible, in those cases, the next step is to find out during first thing which period this ITC is relevant to. For 16.4, usually it for 16.4 verification, you have to check the date of invoice, date of supplier invoice. Here, date of self invoice. Now, one thing you have to be careful about, after 8th October 2024, specifically the timeline to generate self invoice has been mentioned. Now, in these cases, earlier there was no timeline. So, you can generate for one particular transaction anytime the self invoice can be generated. But with effect from 8th October 2024, Rule 47A was inserted. Once this rule was inserted, it was very clear that self invoice to be generated within 30 days. So, in a way, if you don't generate a self invoice, in that case, you don't have a valid document to claim ITC itself in the first place. Because and also yeah, we'll cover one more aspect. Document to claim ITC. Supplier invoice, and in this case, self invoice is required. So now just diverting from the exact conversation. So regarding self invoice, the formatting requirement, what and all are the contents required for self invoice, this will be covered in a different video. Probably you will find the entire related content from the playlist itself. You just navigate yourself to the playlist and you will find all the self invoicing format, what on what basis self invoicing is to be prepared, whether e invoice is required for a self invoice or not. Everything will be covered in different aspects. In general, self invoicing format usually it's prescribed in the rules. So basis these conditions are to be satisfied. Primary rule is rule 46 to be considered, but for our conversation we are just limiting to a higher level grounds as of now. So it's in a very simple case. First, for every service, you have to check whether RCM is applicable or not. Once you have verified RCM is applicable, once that verification is completed, the next you have to check whether the supplier is registered or not registered. Because once you determine whether it's registered or not, on that basis you have to determine the time of supply on which GST liability actually is due. For example, once considering this, your time of supply comes to let's take example 1st October 25. Just an example. 1st October 25. In that case, the time of supply is 1st October 2025. That means when it's due for payment, 1st October, end of the month plus 20th, because that is the due date of filing 3B or actual whenever you're filing, whichever is earlier. In this case, the time of supply will be 20th November. So sorry, due date of payment will be 20th November. Now, same way you have to check whether first RCM applicable or not. Once that is verified, you have to check registered party, unregistered party, because for both of the time and supply provisions are different. For registered party, date of payment or 61st day from the date of invoice, and in case of unregistered party, date of payment or self invoicing or self invoice date you have to check. And yes, yeah, you have to clearly remember that For self invoicing, the maximum days within which a self invoice is to be raised is with 30 days. Post that, you cannot raise, sir. So you're not required to. You cannot raise a self invoice. Self invoice is to be raised within 30 days from the date of original supplier's invoice. Where is it written? Regarding self invoice, it is mentioned in Rule 47A. Now, regarding these timeline, it has been mentioned in section number 13. Now, regarding ITC eligibility, you have to check whether that particular ITC which you are availing is eligible or not. You have to comply with section 17.5 conditions over here. Section 17.5, it is eligible or not, you have to verify it. Once that is verified, you have to come and check the date of supplier you have to check which period whether this ITC belongs, because we have to also comply with section 16.4. 16.4 states that with whatsoever ITC you are having in your hand, that can be claimed maximum end of the financial year plus till the subsequent period 30th November, only that is the last day from which you can claim your ITC. Now to find the relevant financial year, you have to check the date of invoice. Now in this case, in case of a registered person, you have to check the sub date which is mentioned in supplier's invoice. And in case of unregistered party, you have to verify the self invoice date. You have to verify the self invoice date. Now this is the product category regarding which this is mentioned, and also further just adding up self invoice. Why a document to claim ITC is as per self invoice? Because this is clearly mentioned in rule. Let me just write it over here. Rule 36 1 B, and also a reference has been given to section 31.3 F. 31.3 F. Now regarding a person outside India, there can be two categories. First category, first category is associate enterprise, and second is non non-associate enterprises. Non-associated enterprises is equivalent to unregistered party, but in case of associated enterprise, only one particular condition, just there's some difference that condition, because it states that time of supply is date of payment or entry posted in books of accounts. Entry which has been posted in books of accounts. Now further, we have to also check the same condition, ITC eligible or not, whether the RCM is first case applicable or not, that we have to verify. And 16.4 same, we have to issue a self invoice, same manner, issue a self invoice and self invoice. Everything remains same. Here also same as ITC, you have to verify it, and also same thing as here, same thing as here, same thing. So in a way, the entire component regarding associated enterprise, only one new condition is different from the previous one, that is time of supply, date of payment or entry posted in books of accounts is to be considered. Now this is a broader angle, so probably I'll prepare a small Excel for your ease of understanding, considering different cases, different combinations, so that it will contain the formula, like your time of supply formula will be over there, and date of payment, when it's due, when it's payment, so that you can compute the interest liability. I'll prepare a draft Excel and I'll post the same Excel in the same in the same summary, in the same playlist, so that you will find it easy to access it. You can download it, you can use it, so it will be helpful for you. As of now, we are just running through the provision aspect. Once the provision aspect is clearly understood, in after that you will have a good grip. It will take a lot of time to understand this, because there are a lot of combinations. You have to understand section 12 according, and also Rule 47E, and also Rule 36(1)(b), and also Section 31(3)(f), all four combined together where we have prepared the summary. Now let us just move forward to the major component, that is just run through. Let us run through the provisions, and before coming to the last part, we'll have to also consider the worst case. Worst case is that for any reason you're just not able to determine the time of supply. You're not able to determine. In that case, you have to check the date of payment or entry posted in books of accounts. Entry posted in books of accounts, whichever is earlier. And there's one more generic discussion, that is for date of payment. You always have to consider one thing very clearly, that date of payment is combination of two things. First one, second one. First one is credit in bank or payment entry in books of accounts. Whichever is earlier, we have to consider it. So every time in the entire segment, wherever date of payment is mentioned, there will be two legs. Whichever is lower, whichever is earlier, we have to consider it. Whichever is earlier. Even for this one, same thing. There will be two legs. Date of payment is to be considered. So yes, this is an independent concept. Usually you will not find this number of cases, and date of payment is also not that difficult concept to go with. Now, coming to the aspect related to provisions, for section 13, let us run through the section 13. Section 13, you have to come to subsection 3. Subsection 3 specifies that in cases where supplies in respect to which liability to be paid on reverse charge mechanism, you will find all the three conditions. You have to, in this three condition, you have to split it into registered party and unregistered party. You will definitely have some confusion regarding an understanding whether three conditions are, or there are two conditions for registered and for unregistered, because date of payment is common for both the cases, registered and unregistered. But the 60 days time limit is only in cases where supplier is required to issue the invoice, and supplier can issue invoice only when he is registered. So this one particular case will be covered only in case of registered. And clause C states that date of invoice by recipient in cases where it's issued by recipient. When can a recipient issue? In cases where it is the supplier is unregistered and the recipient is issuing a self invoice. Self invoice. What is the format of where is the self invoice is required? Because Rule 47E states that within 30 days you have to raise a self invoice. Now, if we just come to Rule 47E, it states that notwithstanding anything contained in Rule 47, where invoice referred in Rule 46 is required to be issued under 31 subsection 3 clause F. Let's just go. You will find that 31(3) clause F is nothing but a invoice is to be raised in cases where in case the recipient is required to pay taxes under reverse charge under section 9(3) and 9(4). This is section 31 tax invoice. You just come to 31(3)(f). 31(3)(f). A registered person who is liable to pay taxes under 9 subsection 3, 9 subsection 4 shall within a period as may be prescribed, where it is prescribed in Rule 47A. issue an invoice in respect of goods or services or both received by him from a supplier who is not registered on the date of receipt of goods or services. On that day when you're receiving, if the supplier is not registered, in that case, you have to pay RCM. You have to raise an invoice as per Rule 47A. Now, again, coming back to Rule 47A, it states that whoever is required to issue an invoice as per Section 31, Subsection 3, Subsection F, in that case, he shall be liable to say he shall issue the said invoice within a period of 30 days. Within a period of 30 days from the date of receipt of the said goods or both, as the case may be. So probably I made a mistake, I think, in explaining earlier then. I think just let me just correct it. So I have made one mistake in the unregistered portion. Instead of within 30 days from date of receipt of service, so incorrectly I have mentioned date of receipt of goods. So that was mistake from my end. So I probably rectified it. So yes, within 30 days from the date of receipt of said goods or services. Now the effective date is 8th October 2024. Even this we have already discussed it. Now coming to the ITC component, if we come to ITC component, we will find that Rule 36 states that documentary requirement and condition for claiming ITC. Now here again, if we come to sub rule 1 clause B, it states that a invoice issued in accordance with the provision 31(3)(f) subject to the taxes paid, payment of taxes. So it clearly mentions that when any invoice is issued as per 31(3)(f), that is self invoice. So for availing ITC, you require self invoice, and self invoice is generated only in cases of unregistered person. So that in a way it means that for unregistered category, you need a self invoice which is to be generated. Once again, sorry. For unregistered category, you need a self invoice to be generated. For registered, there is nowhere mentioned that what sort of documentary is required. So we presume that the first case, an invoice issued by the supplier of goods or service for both in accordance with section 31. So whatsoever invoice the opposite party, a registered supplier, is giving to you, that invoice copy will be sufficient for availing ITC with respect to RCM from those registered persons. In case the supplier is registered, the supplier invoice copy is sufficient. In case the supplier is not registered, in that case you have to generate a self invoice. That self invoice will be used for claiming ITC. And regarding this, I have probably covered the entire case with respect to RCM. So yes, up and down, once you have a broader reading, only in that case you will be able to understand. I tried my best to summarize in the easiest manner. So even if probably yes, this video and the playlist will be updating based on the requirement, based on further understanding. And also one more part, I think I have missed it. That is regarding section 13. If you come to proviso, you will find that in cases where supplies are by associated enterprises, in case of import of services from associated enterprises, it states that, and such parties are located outside India, then the time of supply shall be date of entry in the books of accounts or the date of payment, whichever is earlier. So yes, probably I have covered the broader portion with respect to RCM. In a nutshell, you just have to remember a few things. In cases of service, first thing, if RCM is applicable, in that case, you have to verify section 13 compliance, section 13 subsection 3 conditions you have to verify, you have to run through for understanding the time of supply, because applicability of interest will be determined based on that if you pay the payment after the due date of payment. First thing, section 13 subsection 3. Second one is regarding invoicing only with respect to self invoice, that is rule 47E. Third component, for availing ITC, you have to verify whether such RCM transaction fall under section 17(5) ineligible category, such as renting a gap. Renting a motor vehicle, in those cases you have to pay RCM. Now renting a gap is especially blocked as per 17(5) subsection B. In those cases, In those cases, first thing, time of supply. Second thing, self invoice for registered party, same invoice. Unregistered party, you have to generate a self invoice. Third category, ITC availability, eligibility, you have to check. That is section 17.5, you have to comply with. Once that is done, for understanding the 16.4 compliance, you have to check the date given in the invoice. For registered party, in their invoice itself, there will be a date. From that date, that will be the relevant financial year, plus till 30th November you have to consider it and avail the ITC. In the unregistered party, self-invoice date should be considered, and self-invoice should be within 30 days from the date of receipt of service or goods, in as the case may be. So total following which, I'll just repeat the section numbers, rules. Section 13 subsection 3 and the respective provisos. Rule 47A. Section 31 3 subsection subclause F, clause F. Rule 36 1 clause B. Now these are the four necessary requirement, and also additionally section 16.4, section 17.5. These are general compliance. So specifically regarding RCM, these four conditions are to be checked, and hopefully, yes, I'll try to summarize in a maximum manner. So any further clarifications or notification will be covered, and probably you will find it in the playlist. So rather than navigating to the videos, just go to the playlist and you will have a better understanding in every case. Sure. Thank you.